telling me that it ain't all that much fun anymore. Riding for the money, 'cause your money don't mean a damn thing. Take a job working the city, but uncertainty is flooding my mind. It don't feel right. One of these nights, I think I just might rather watch the money run dry. Let the money run dry.
All right, so welcome everyone to a very special edition of Lunch Out Loud Auto. Once again, I'm Nick Pachuski.
I'm Andrew Miller.
All right, so that song right there you heard was Let the Money Run Dry. So that is from Autumn's Cannon, who you might have seen a couple weeks ago open up for the Arkells at the historic first major event at Spark Street for New Year's, which just announced that they will be having fireworks in 2014. Next year, so that's going to be very good. So we're joined here with Mayor Jim Watson.
Welcome, Jim.
Thank
Welcome,
you.
very
Glad to be
Jim.
on the show.
Good to have you.
We thought it would be an excellent interview to kind of get to know Jim a lot more. We all know him as the very outgoing mayor of Ottawa. You can see him at absolutely any single event that's on in the city. If you know there's an event going on from Carp to Orleans to anywhere else within a 100-kilometer range, you know he's going to be there at some time or the other.
It's almost like he has stunt doubles. There's so many places that he seems to pop up here, right, Jim?
Or an evil twin or something.
Yeah.
Evil twin, and the most common question that you're always asked is, do you do your own Twittering? Which, of course, you...
I do, yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
you do? Really?
I do, oh, yeah.
Wow, good for you. 'Cause
You do.
I follow you as well, and I'm telling you, you're constantly up on the news feeds, and I would have thought you definitely would have had some help.
Yeah.
I wasn't even sure if that we should have asked that question just in case you don't do it.
No, I
do it.
Wow.
My BlackBerry's right over there, and we should get a picture of this, and we can.
Oh, still a BlackBerry man as well, too. Yeah, that's
support
good.
the Canadian company.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we want to get to know a little bit more about you, and because you're kind of like me, I came from Guelph and then settled in Ottawa for university, and I have not left. I just fell in love with the city, and you came from around Montreal for university at Carleton, and haven't left. Well, you left for a little bit of time, but in the end, you did come back. So what drew you back to Ottawa? What brought you to keep you here and not leave?
Well, I grew up in a little town just north and east of here called Lachute, Quebec, and then moved to Montreal. My father was transferred for grade 10, or grade 9, I guess, and then he was transferred again to Toronto, then to Sarnia, and I graduated in high school in Sarnia and wanted to. I like politics and I like journalism, and I thought there was no better city than Ottawa to come to. So I arrived here, and it was also close to Lachute, so I could go visit my grandmother and great aunts and cousins and so on. And I just fell in love with the city. I thought it was a great city. It was the best of both worlds. I'd lived in two of the largest cities in Canada, the two largest cities, Toronto and Montreal. I lived in a small town and a mid-sized city, and I just thought Ottawa was the perfect size and beautiful city, and it had Parliament buildings, the museums, the canal, the Gatineau Hills. I was a skier, so you could go.
I was going to assume growing up in Lachute, I grew up not too far away from there myself, and I would have to cut through Lachute all the time to head up to the hills. So
Yeah.
I'm assuming you probably frequented places like Sever and Morin Heights and whatnot.
Yeah,
Would be close to you
and
there.
Carmel,
But
so it was great.
Yeah.
So I just decided, to stay here, and I ended up getting a job with first the federal government and then on Parliament Hill, and worked my way up to become Director of Communications for the Speaker of the House of Commons, and I did that for 5 or 6 years, and that was a fascinating time because, you were in a non-partisan office in a very partisan environment,
Yes.
namely Parliament Hill. And, I had the chance to meet Margaret Thatcher and Nelson Mandela and
Oh, wow.
George Bush and all of these great world leaders that would come through and address Parliament, and we would host them in the Speaker's office. So, for a guy who was 21 or 22, it was a pretty heady experience.
for sure.
Yeah, so, and then you became city councillor when you're roughly around 30 years old. So what drew you to becoming a city councillor? Did you participate in any community associations while working in the government?
Really, I got involved with the Alumni Association at Carleton. I became president of the Alumni Association, and did some charity work with the Ottawa Symphony Orchestra. But what really drove me was a few years before I ran for council in 1991, I bought a house in Old Ottawa South. And when you are renting, even though you pay property taxes, you don't actually see the bill. It's incorporated into your rent. And you don't pay a lot of attention, to be perfectly honest, to what's going on at City Hall because you don't see the connection between your rent money and property taxes. So when you get a house, you start getting a property tax bill, and all of a sudden, for a very modest, small house that I had in Old Ottawa South, I was paying a lot of property taxes, at least I thought so. So I started paying more attention to City Hall, and I followed the work of my city councillor, and I just was not particularly impressed with the kind of work she was doing and her accessibility and so on. And I got together with some friends about a year and a half before the election and said, I think I'm going to run for council. And most of them thought I was a bit nutty because I had a very good job, well-paying, and, this great job on the Hill. But I felt passionately about it. I started following council meetings, and I didn't really go to committee meetings and so on, but I would follow them through the media. And threw my hat in the ring in 1991, and I think there were 3 or 4 other people who ran, as well as the incumbent, and I was fortunate enough to win the election.
Excellent. And those were, and look at where you are now. So those were formidable years. And then, just before we start talking more about you and yourself and some other things in Ottawa, what drew you back from working in Toronto and then coming back and deciding I want to become mayor yet again?
Well, I was, again, I've always been fortunate in my jobs that I've had. I've always enjoyed what I've done, and, my philosophy is, the day you no longer enjoy getting up and going to work, it's maybe time to look for something else because you're not helping yourself and you're probably not helping your colleagues in your workplace. But that wasn't the case when I was an MPP. I enjoyed representing Ottawa West Nepean, and it was a great series of communities, and I was very fortunate to be in cabinet my whole time as an MPP in 3 different but challenging portfolios, and my last one was Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, which in essence you're almost like the mayor of mayors. So people would say, why would you come back if you're in charge of all of the municipal work in the province, come back to being mayor? You've already done that before. And I, like a lot of people, were frustrated with where council was going. A lot of people considered the council somewhat dysfunctional. Yeah. I think there were some, obviously the challenges that Mayor O'Brien had, during his term. And I had more and more people stop me on the street or email me or call me and say, we need some stability back at City Hall. Yeah. So I gave it some thought and decided in January of 2010 that I was going to step down as an MPP and cabinet minister, and spoke to the Premier about it, and I launched my campaign in February.
Yeah, and very thankful you did. It's been a lot more stable since those days. I remember that. Those were my early days of just starting, after university, starting to get into the workforce and seeing where these tax dollars are going, and reading the newspaper a lot more.
Well, let's. I think obviously myself being in real estate, I kind of want to jump back a little bit to your first purchase here in Ottawa. You mentioned that you purchased a home in Ottawa, Old Ottawa South there. Right. Was that your very first home that you'd ever purchased? Or?
Yeah, it was. It was a semi-detached on a little street called Pansy Avenue, one block, and I lived in that neighborhood when I was a student, both in residence on campus and then off campus. So I knew it well, and my parents lived in the Glebe, and my sister lived in Old Ottawa East. So it was a nice central location to keep in touch with my family. And when I got elected as an MPP, I didn't live in the riding I represented in the West End, and I made a commitment during the campaign that I would move to the West End. So I sold my house in Old Ottawa South and found a new house that was actually being built that was just literally a 2-minute walk from my constituency office. So it worked out well. Yeah, so this is the house I'm in now is only my second house I've owned.
Oh, really? The same house that you bought when you were the MPP? Or?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I lived in Old Ottawa South. I was a homeowner there, I think, for 15 or 16 years. And
well, that's a pretty good term. I'm sure you did fairly well on that home, regardless.
Well, I did.
As we know, the values there are increasing.
Yeah, and
pretty rapidly all the time. So.
I regret, in some ways, not keeping the house as an investment property.
I was going to actually bring that up. Yeah.
It's a very desirable neighborhood. I was a block and a half from the canal, and it was a great little house. But, a combination of I probably would have stretched myself financially too far to have two houses. And then you get into this situation. I ended up becoming the minister of housing. Can you imagine tenants calling, "Hey, my landlord is fixing the porch, and he's the minister of housing." So I thought it's probably not worth it.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a very good look at all.
No.
So now that there's been a lot of changes in Ottawa since you've been back, what are some of the restaurants you used to maybe hang out with, or kind of the activities other than the skiing that you used to participate in back then? You're very busy now, so you might not get to participate in as many activities, extracurricular as you'd want to, or other kinds of restaurants. But you must have some kind of favorite foods and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, when I left my term as mayor last time, the council bought me an oil painting by a local artist, Ben Babalowski, who painted that picture over there of the Aberdeen Pavilion.
Oh.
And it was a streetscape of the Glebe, because that was the ward, part of the ward I represented. And I looked at that the other day. It's hanging in my den at my house. And I think with the exception of one store, every other store and restaurant has changed.
Yeah.
And it just shows, how neighborhoods transform themselves and so on. And there was one of the restaurants that was an old favorite of mine called the Avenue Restaurant, which is now, I think it's called the Avenue Grill or something like that. It's in the same location, but it was like walking back in time. It was old linoleum floors and old booths and the old, fountain at the bar and so on. And it was basically a real hangout for people for breakfast primarily. And it would be the gathering spot. It was like the old hot stove league, like in Boston Hewitt States, it's hockey. And you get there and you'd run into, Jeffrey Simpson from the Globe and Mail, or Lloyd Axworthy, a cabinet minister, or I would go in as mayor, and you'd see business people. But it was all people in the neighborhood, and that was sort of the hangout, and a really good breakfast for, I think at the time, $2.50 or something like that. So the couple that ran that, it was a family restaurant, they sold it, and it went through a number of different bars and restaurants, and now I think it's called the Avenue Grill, but it used to be called the Avenue Restaurant.
Yeah.
So do you have any other favorites currently that you like to frequent?
There's a lot. One of them just closed. Again, the Newport restaurant was.
I did see that, yeah.
The home of the Elvis Sighting Society, and that was another, I'd go there for after council meetings with some of the councillors, and it's near my house now where I live, and I think the last time I was there was with the U.S. ambassador. I introduced him to this restaurant and it became sort of his favorite. And Mo Attella, who owns that, who's a great community leader, has consolidated his restaurant with his wife's restaurant down the street on Churchill. But I like,
I used to live a couple of blocks from there. That's Donna's Express. That's correct. And they also, correct me if I'm wrong, they also own the restaurant that's at Westboro Beach as well, correct?
That's right. Yeah, a very successful business person, but a great contributor to the community. And, I like, a wide variety of places, like, the sort of, newer places like, Play in the Market is great.
The Becta.
Yeah.
Have you had a chance to try his new restaurant out yet in Westboro there?
Yeah, it's just across from the old Newport. I've been there, but just for a reception, but not for a meal yet. But I've eaten at Becta. And, I like going to the Keg Manor.
That's gorgeous in there as well.
It's like walking back in time, the big stone fireplace, and things like that. And the challenge I have is that I tend to go to a lot of banquets, and each night there's a banquet, so you're not really going to a restaurant. You maybe go to a convention center or one of the hotels, which is fine, but I don't have as many free nights to go and check out some of the new restaurants. And there's some amazing ones. Like, we've come a long way in Ottawa.
Absolutely. Been incredible.
Especially the Westboro area now. I mean, there's a lot there.
And the multicultural, ethnic foods that are now available that just weren't available when
Phenomenal.
I arrived here in the 1980s.
All right, so we're going to play one more song right now from the new album from Autumn's Cannon that will be coming out shortly in May. Another thing about Autumn's Cannon, they won the Live 88.5 money shot, so they got a $150,000 grant to get some great producers for this album. The odd thing that happened, which is incredible, is they were only together for 1 year before winning this huge contest. So there is going to be you're going to be hearing them a lot. A lot of radio stations across the country are now picking up their latest single, which we'll be playing at the end. But for now, we're going to play Shake It Off, and then we'll be right back with Mayor Jim Watson, and we're going to talk about the future of Ottawa, as well as some new things that are coming up very soon. So we'll be back in just a moment.
Someone looks strange. Shake it off, break it off. I'm running out, holding my breath, it seems. Shake it off, break it off. Tonight's wake up from the working man's news. Shake it off, break it off. How many miles can I walk in these shoes? Shake it off, break it off. Shake it off, shake it off. Find your way to break it off. Shake it off, shake it off. Find your way to break it off.
All right, what did you think of that one?
It was great. Yeah, I actually heard them perform at Spark Street because there were 3 different events I went to on New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
One was here at City Hall. There was a Scottish Society event called the Hogmanay, which was packed, and people were skating on the Rink of Dreams and Scotch testing and eating haggis and stuff like that.
Awful,
And then I walked over to Spark Street, and it was packed, and I heard the band, just their last song.
Yeah.
And then over at Centrepoint, there was a family kind of a event that Councillor Rick Shirelli organizes every year at Ben Franklin Place, skating and hot dogs and music and games for the kids. So it was great to have the bands live, and we had the Barra McNeils performing here for the Scottish event because in the past there was really nothing in downtown Ottawa, and it was a bit of a dead zone.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And it's great that we sort of welcomed 2013 with a bang. We had 2 major events downtown, plus the convention center. Private, it was a private company that put on a party.
Yeah.
It was sold out as well.
Was it the Dancing with the Stars one?
I think, something like
Something,
that.
yeah.
Someone just booked the convention.
No,
center,
we
so there
were
options available for people this year, which is great.
Yeah, we were talking about that on one of the earlier episodes there at the beginning of the year, how it's great that Ottawa's finally getting some big events like this. You look at all the other big cities, and I mean, everywhere across the world, they always have big New Year's events. So it's great that we're getting into them. So,
and the Sparks BIA with Les and Christina, they're making a big push towards drawing people to Sparks. So, what do you think of the planned Zipline that's going down Sparks Street?
I was asked that yesterday. I do an online chat every month, and someone asked me about that, and I said, look, if it's feasible, why not do it? Because we need good ideas, and we need new ideas and different ideas for Spark Street, because I think it had its glory heyday back in the 60s, and it was just packed. And through a combination of nothing really to do with the merchants, but the federal government owns a lot of that property, or most of it, and they're not always the greatest at turnaround on leases. So it sits there empty, and you have a bunch of empty stores. It's not much of a draw. So I encourage the Spark Street folks to, the proverbial think outside the box. Things like the Busker Fest brings thousands of people down to Spark Street.
Winter
the
Brew.
Rib Fest.
Winter Brew, that's going to be coming out.
Those kinds of things are important. They need a couple of bigger anchor stores. I think that new brasserie, the three
brasseries. I think I'll be watching the hockey games this weekend on Saturday.
Yeah,
the opening game there.
Yeah, I haven't been in there. My office, the Tourism Commission, used to be located in that building, and I think it's a great addition because that acts as an anchor. You've got Darcy McGee's on the other side, which is another good popular anchor.
Yeah.
Now you've got to make sure the federal government starts leasing that space so that it's give people longer term leases. What I hear from merchants, they'll only get a 1-year lease. Well, you can't do much planning long term if you think you're going to be kicked out in a year.
Yeah. Sure. All right, so we'll just run through. Tomorrow, I just reading in the newspaper today that the Presto Passes, they're launching 10,000 it's been long delayed since July.
Right.
That's a very long delay. No idea why that long, but at least they say it's 98% effective or somewhere around that. So tell people a little more about the Presto Passes, how it's going to benefit us going forward.
Yeah, this is, people say, well, why can't it just be like the Tim Hortons card? You tap and you go, because it's more complicated than that. What we're trying to do is to create a card that makes it easier for you as a bus passenger to go and renew your card. Right now, if you have to renew your card, you've got to stand in a big line up at the end of every month and
Exactly.
pay. These cards, you'll be able to load up your month online at home. So you get the card, and the first 200,000 of them will be free. And as you mentioned, tomorrow on Friday, 10,000 more will be because we're going to ramp up. We don't want to do everyone at once because we've had some technical problems. And you'll be able to do, there'll be basically two types of cards. There'll be the monthly pass, so you can load on and pay for that online and get your monthly pass. Or it can be an e-purse, which is, you load up $20 and you don't use it that often. You can just swipe and it takes, the fare off for that one swipe, like a Tim's card.
That's a great idea, because scrounging for change when you're trying to catch a bus real quick, that's
so it's, it gives you the freedom to sort of put, how much you want on based on, well, I probably take the bus maybe once or twice a week. You don't need a pass.
Yeah.
The other thing is with the pass, if you do sign up for a pass, you can now share it with other people in your family.
Okay.
So, let's say you as a father use the pass Monday to Friday to go to work, but your kids have your son or daughter has a part-time job on the weekend. They need the bus. They don't have to get a pass. You can just give them their pass.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It's completely transferable. So, there have been some glitches and bumps along the road, no question about that. And the reason for that is we're the guinea pig. We're the first ones to come up with all of these different technological advances. So when people say, why don't you just duplicate what Gatineau has, or whatever, well, we're doing much more than that. You're going to be able to load it on, you're going to be able to tell how much money you have on, you can log on to find out how much money is.
Probably an app for it, probably an app or something like that as well.
Yeah, and there's, the world of technology changes literally every day. So we want to try to get the best card that's the most reliable.
Okay.
Perfect.
So just trying to, I guess we're running low on time. It always moves quick here. I just want to run through a couple things. Laurier bike lanes, how's that looking for going forward in the future? Any updates on that?
Well, it's worked really well.
It
We had
has.
over 500,000. We put sensors in the pavement so we can count bikes that go over it, and there's over 500,000 people that used it.
Yeah.
We'll have a report in a couple of months because we said it was a 2-year pilot project, and that 2 years comes up in July. My sense is that it's worked extremely well, and I don't want to prejudge what's going to be in the report, but I like segregated bike lanes. I think they're safe for cyclists. We're the first city in Ontario to have downtown segregated bike lanes, but we're not the first by no means in the world.
No,
I was in China 2 years ago. They're all over the place. Montreal is very progressive.
Netherlands.
We're just catching up.
Yeah, and I'll be at the Downtown Moves tonight. They're showing their plans. That's not. Is it true that it's not going to be the Downtown Moves? They're presenting their findings, their kind of strategy tonight, but it's not being implemented until 2018 when the LRT on light rail is done.
Yeah, everything is really geared towards light rail because that's our single largest infrastructure program. And to remind your listeners, it's 13 kilometers, 13 stations, 2.1 billion, goes from Tunney's Pasture through the downtown in a tunnel, up at Ottawa U and out east of Blair Road. And that's the first phase. Then we're going to go farther east and west and south so that it becomes the backbone of a transit system. Because quite frankly, you go down to Slater and Albert Street today at rush hour, it's bumper-to-bumper buses. You can't fit any more on. The system's at capacity. So we're going to have a system that will have trains coming at rush hour literally every 3 minutes. So you'll take your regular bus from your neighborhood, it'll feed into a train station, and chances are you get there and it's going to be 1, 2, or 3 minutes, and then you're off to the downtown.
Yeah, can't wait for that. Next thing, Lansdowne Live. That's another major project that you finally got off the ground. The Red Blacks. I don't know about that name for a team. I'm sorry. I don't know
if they finally decided.
No, they haven't.
Someone asked me yesterday on my online chat what I think of it, and I don't think it's that original Red Blacks.
No, it's not, and especially when there's a lot of people have come forward with ones that tie into the canal system, like you've been talking lumberjack. Exactly,
that's a good one.
Lumberjack.
Yeah, something a little more different.
Python song. I'm a lumberjack.
One question I've always wanted to ask you, and I know you've talked about that Lansdowne Live, that they have a transportation minister that's going to look at it. I just look at the glebe and going down the street, and like in traffic, 3 to 4 p.m. or 3 to 5 or 6 p.m., it is log jam packed going down. So I see that there are maybe some footbridges that are going to be going over to attach people to games. But what's going to keep people coming back in 2 years after the novelty of the CFL being back? After that novelty is back, when the traffic is going to be bumper to bumper, because I know the LRT will not be hitting that kind of section, and that is a bit off of the 417. So what kind of studies?
I think the challenge, there's no question that the biggest challenge facing Lansdowne is traffic and parking, because there's going to be about 1,500 underground spots, and then I think just 50 or 60 above ground spots. So most people will be going underground. But for big events, right now, when we had the Grey Cup several years ago, that was a problem then. And when we have the 67s plus a trade show at the same time, it's always been a problem. So there's been a history of challenges. So what's going to be a little different with Lansdowne and the revitalization is a couple of things. First of all, currently Lansdowne is hit and miss. There's a big event and then there's nothing for 4 or 5 days.
That's right.
We're going to even that out because we're going to have shops and people living there and recreation facilities. So it'll be more steady as opposed to sort of peak and valley. Secondly, when there are major events like the Grey Cup, we'll work with the NCC and we'll convert Queen Elizabeth Driveway into, in essence, a transit way for buses. So people will be able to, get out of the stadium, walk to the Queen Elizabeth. Buses will bring you to the downtown, bring you out to the south end of the city. We'll arrange for park and rides at places like Canada Post and Carleton University, shuttle services that will be operational in major events. So you can park at Carleton and take the bus.
That's very good to hear. That's going to...
It's a good problem to have when it's a busy area. You don't want tumbleweed going down your main street and no one wanting to go there. The Glebe's a desirable neighborhood. Yeah. Lansdowne's going to allow us to connect two great neighborhoods, Glebe and Old Ottawa South, plus with the pedestrian bridge is going to connect Old Ottawa East.
All right. Great. So, we're running out of time. There's a lot more things I wanted to touch on. We got the figure skating championships, Women's World Cup, World Women's Hockey Championship, the Women's World Cup of Soccer coming here, the new convention center, which has been excellent here. So there are a lot of things that I haven't touched on.
Part of, just if I can mention just for a moment, it's part of the overall strategy that we've developed and I've campaigned on in my election. We've got to go and attract more events like that. We've got the convention center. We have the new CE Center, which is now Ernst & Young out by the airport. Yep. And we've been very successful. We had the NHL All-Star Game last year, the Juno Awards. We've got the FIFA Women's World Cup. These things are big draws. They create a lot of jobs, economic activity. It's part of my vision that we want to be, the destination leading up to 2017, which is the 150th.
And you seem to always be about community. I know the Rink of Dreams, the main thing that you wanted for that was getting people down to City Hall and creating more of a community, getting them down there. And I know over the past couple weeks when our weather has been fluctuating more than I don't even know. I know the Rink of Dreams has been that one stalwart that when people are like, oh no, it's slushy, it's terrible, what are we going to do today? They know that the Rink of Dreams, we can go down to City Hall, we can do that. And then they're going to go visit the Bytown Market, Byward Market and everything like that. So it's been excellent. It does
act as a magnet. And that place around, Marion Dewar Plaza was pretty dead. And the first year of the Rink of Dreams, even though it was open partially, it opened in late January. Yeah. We've had 25,500 people use that rink just in a couple of months. Yeah. So, you go there at night, it's lit up, it's beautiful.
It is.
And we're very proud that the Senators paid for most of it.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, to Jim, taking out of your busy schedule. I know you're going to be at the Orleans Chamber of Commerce Awards tonight. That's going to be excellent. And then will you be at the Sens game home opener?
You know what? I'm speaking at the annual general meeting of the Ottawa Food Bank, and I already agreed to that. It wouldn't look very good if I can't.
No, absolutely not.
Food bank is definitely important.
All right. So next week we have Tony Greco, so that's going to be a very fit show. We're going to be working out during that, I think.
I'm going to have to hit the gym a couple of times before we do it.
All right. So we're going to close with one last song from Autumn's Cannon. This is their single, Open Letter, and you can probably hear this on a lot of the radio stations, Live 88.5, and hopefully a lot more. You're going to be hearing them a lot in the future, so have a great day.
To explain, maybe that's okay. I know I'm hard to gotta change. All the sleepless nights we've wasted wandering apart. All these sleepless nights. I remember when I said to you, nothing's getting through this bed.